Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. This is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and as always, I'm joined on our state-of-the-art radio program by my first officer, Jeremy Grapenden. Folks, this will be the final boarding call, so if you please, claim your seats, fasten your seatbelts, kick back, relax, and enjoy the show while I go ahead and delve into the pre-flight checklist and Jeremy makes sure everyone is on board. Folks, as always, we want to welcome you aboard. Let's go ahead and jump into this show because there is a lot to get to. And we're going to start off with poor little Rush Limbaugh. He's had a couple of problems coming up in this last week, particularly with callers going after him for essentially basically defending Donaldoff Julius Caesar Trumpolini on everything he's had to say. And it's just amazing because where it really comes into play here is with respect to his flipping on immigration. Remember, that was the big hoity-toity hullabaloo of everything that mattered during the primary process. And it was something he said, I'm going to build a wall. It's going to be a perfect wall forever. Yeah. And so what we see is that this listener called in to the Hush and Lush Bimbo show. And I've got a about 3-minute clip on this that is just a must hear. So I'm going to cue that up and then we're going to discuss it. So here we go.
We're going to go to Rick in Los Angeles. I'm glad you waited, sir. Your turn. Have at it.
Thanks for taking my call, Rush. I just wanted to comment on your comments that you just made about Trump and his illegal and his deportation shift. And I just distinctly heard you say it's not considered a flip-flop. And I just want to tell you, you're doing a disservice to all of us Republican primary voters who didn't vote for Trump, that are struggling with whether or not to vote for Trump, when you diminish the impact of his single policy that he ridiculed all other candidates for over a year. I mean, John Kasich classically said on the debate stage, he laughingly said, come on, folks, this isn't serious. He's not going to deport everyone. And Trump went ahead and ridiculed everybody who wasn't for deportation. And for all of us who were saying that it was a con job, that it was a snow job, that he doesn't know what he's talking about, that he's unqualified to be president, for you to sit here and say that now that he adopts all the positions of everybody he ridiculed as not even being a flip-flop and it's no big deal, this is why so many Republican voters have such a hard time going to the con man.
Well, in the first place, I don't think Trump has actually changed that much from what he said. And I'm also not aware that he told every Republican they had to agree with him or else whatever he was going to do to them, he did.
Well, I said it was 3 minutes. I got bored already. But what it goes to show is that Rush Limbaugh is struggling here. He is literally struggling with what he has done and said and tried to bring about, and it makes no sense whatsoever. And, of course, it's truly disgusting that that's what's happening because it shows that he does not really believe in all of the stuff that he was defending throughout the primary process, and he essentially let Trump get away with everything. And you could hear the righteous indignation in that caller's tone of voice. And I think that that was certainly well-deserved because of what he was doing and because of the way he's just gone out onto a limb here, making things far worse than they had to be.
You know, Randy, it seems to me that Rush Limbaugh is becoming consistently inconsistent, just like Trump. Because how many times have we heard him say this, and then he tries to backpedal on it, say, "Well, that's not exactly what I meant," and just to give some clarification. I'm tired of people trying to give clarification on crap that they say when the first inclination that comes out of their mouth is exactly what they mean. And then they get called on it, and then they try to backpedal. It's crap. These are the people that are we're supposed to take their word and take their advice and listen to them? Why? Why should we? Why? Because he's Lush Bimbo? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
no, sorry. No, not going to happen. Not going to happen.
That's
Why? Because we can think for ourselves.
and that's what he's trying to stand for. It's all about him trying to stand up off of the fame that he's made for himself, having done, what is it, about 3 decades in radio? I think he started in 1987. So he's almost at 30 years of doing his program, and he really is doing a disservice to conservatives. He really should be knocked off of the position of king of conservative talk radio, because if you're not going to go out there and actually represent conservatism and stand for the very thing that you claimed to have been preaching for damn near 30 years, then we've got a major problem. It's a problem that just cannot be ignored, and it only seems to be growing worse by the day. I think that Rush has essentially shot all of his credibility during this cycle. And that just is tragic in a way, because back in the 80s and early 90s, Rush was doing a great service. Rush did inspire a lot of people to go into the medium and to try and get conservative voices heard. Because before that, literally, radio was not very conservative. You had little snippets from people like Paul Harvey, but certainly not on the scale of doing political analysis, not on the scale of literally looking into what matters to the true voting base. And therefore, it left us in an untenable, unsatiable situation. And so he had created this new genre. Essentially had created this new genre from scratch, and now he has wholly abandoned it. Wholly abandoned all of the principles that he claimed were important. And where does that leave us? Where does it leave us when the so-called king of conservative talk radio has gone out and abandoned everything?
Well, I don't think it's just this election cycle when he began this, Randy. Remember, right, back in 2008, McCain's going to win by a landslide, folks. He's going to win by a landslide. And then it was Romney's going to win by a landslide. He was wrong both of those cycles. And he couldn't be more wrong this election cycle with everything that he's saying. Again, he is adopting the verbiage, and basically he's one of Trump's star pupils at Trump U. It was what it boils down to. Because he's throwing everything behind Trump. He's trying to backpedal on things when he gets called out. And it's almost like he's in a flat spin, a tailspin with this. And he's not the only one. He's not the only one. Our last episode together, our last show together, we talked about Laura Inkampf and her little, tinsel-toed jackboot, Edmund Cucksack. It's just all these people are coming out of the woodworks. You had Little Orphan Annie Yap Yap, Flabbin, who's trying to run this book deal and all this other stuff. You know what? I've had irritable bowel syndromes that last longer than her book showing that's going on. Okay, so it's awesome. I think it's actually quite an astute comparative analysis with her. Because that's all she is. At least my bowel syndromes were able to pass. With her, it's like it's the same crap over and over. It just never goes away. So,
right. And it's because she has no point. She has no position. She really does not espouse conservatism, and that's a major problem. But back to Rush, remember John Ziegler? We had mentioned him in a very early show back during the primary process, where he was talking about how the supposed conservative punditry and commensurate had essentially sold their soul. And he has a piece that he put out in Mediate yesterday, in which he talks about how Rush had inspired him to get into radio. And he even said that Howard Stern doesn't compare to Rush when it comes to doing unscripted broadcasting. But he says he's very, very angry at Rush, because Rush just essentially watched this guy set fires to everything that Rush was attempting to build over these 29 plus years and just kind of let it burn, and then seemed surprised when his faithful listeners and dwindling audience members felt that it was a disservice. There should be no surprise about that, because Donald J. Trump does not adhere to any of the positions that we hold, any of the conservative positions that we hold near or dear. And so we have to be proactive with this and hold him accountable.
Well, it's almost, I'm getting the vibe from Lush Limbaugh that he's offended by his listening base turning him off. He's offended. He takes offense to that. He's the king of conservative talk radio. How dare anybody turn me off? Well, guess what? Shut up. I don't want to hear it anymore. Because when you start adopting the same mantra and the same inconsistencies of a presidential candidate who's not even fit to be president, you're no better than the jackbooted thugs that are supporting Hillary and changing the lyrics of gospel songs to omit the word Jesus and putting Hillary in there. I don't know if you saw that, Randy, but there was actually...
Yeah, I did.
Disgusting. Mm-hmm. And see, Rush is going right down. He's running a parallel path, but instead of exposing people for frauds who they are, he's attacking people who are calling him out for his incompetency.
Mm-hmm.
He like you said, he it's almost like he built an empire for conservative talk radio, and now he's
setting a match to it. He's
Nero fiddling while the place burns, is what it is.
Right.
He doesn't want to do anything about the fire set. He doesn't want to pick up a pail or a fire hose to put it out. He wants to keep fanning
it's interesting that you brought up the whole thing about Trump not being fit. There is that lawsuit that's going forth in Ohio, and I do wish them the best of luck with that, because it will be interesting to see where that goes. We're crossing our fingers for it here, because we do need to have accountability in our electoral process. And I believe that is one way to try and go about it. We have to try every course and cause of avenue ahead of us, because if we don't, then they're going to fully feel that they can keep doing this. And the surest way to fail is to not even try. But going back to this Ziegler guy, he said that the problem with Rush is that he just essentially came out and said, well, the reason I didn't do anything or hold Trump accountable for these clear and blaring discrepancies is because I didn't take him seriously. Why would you not take him seriously on that issue? Why would you not convey that to your listeners? In my mind, that is being just disingenuous to them. That is letting them down. That is not doing the good thing. That is a disservice, because he claims that he's America's truth detector. But how can you be America's truth detector when you're going to let a whopper like that fall through the cracks?
Well, let's take another playbook out of history, another lesson, shall we?
Right.
What if the German people that didn't adhere to what Hitler was saying stopped doing what they were doing and just went along and followed along with the crowd? I mean, we had uprisings. Imagine if the rest of the world didn't hold Hitler accountable to what was going on. What would happen? See, that's the
still be goose-stepping throughout Europe.
Right. And that's the magnitude that people don't even want to gravitate to or even think about, because it's an instantaneous gratification society. That's what they want. They want here and now, and that's it. They don't care about the long term. And that's the issue. See, Rush is just thinking blindly on this, and looking at this as a short-term thing. Well, we got to hit them now. We got to get this before the election. No, I want somebody who is going to satisfy the short term, but also do better for the long term. That's what they don't understand.
Well, it's because they don't know how to plan. They just go to the nearest thing. It's like you're looking for this shiny object that's going to guide you to some better position. And, you know, Jeremy, that's what leads to that disastrous, erroneous notion of voting for the lesser of two weasels. You're still voting for a weasel. You're still going to let them into the hen house. You're still going to let them just decimate your stock of food, that is, the chickens, because they're going to do it for themselves. And they're going to sit there and say, well, he's a smaller weasel. He's a smaller weasel, and therefore he's a lesser of two weasels. But is he not going to do the same damn thing as the bigger weasel, just at a slower pace? That's where we are. That's what we're facing. And Rush Limbaugh should have been, you know, one of the sheep hound dogs out there, one of the border collies that's out there to chase away these varmint.
But here's the thing. What happens when the individuals and the farmers allow these weasels to come into the head house and kill their flocks? Okay, they get so upset and so mad. Instead of going after the weasel, they go after the sheepdogs, the border collies that were there trying to protect it, giving the warning signs. They go and shoot them. They go and destroy them and get them out of the way and blame them. See, we are the border collies, Randy. That's what it boils down to. And we're the ones that are being blamed because we won't jump online the Trump train, jump right online. I'm sorry. I don't have any inclination of committing any type of suicide at all. Intellectual,
certainly not national suicide.
Sure.
Certainly not voting suicide or intellectual suicide, as you just mentioned.
We're going to continue to bellow out the warnings as long as it takes. And the warnings are going to become less and less meant as a warning and more placing of where the blame lies or the accountability and putting that into perspective where it has to go. Because this is, again, we're the ones being attacked because we're anti-Trump. Oh, you're never-Trumpers, is it? No, never means never. It's not just never Trump. It's not just never Hillary. It's never anti-Constitution. It is never populism. It is never moral relativism. It is never political correctness. It is never all of those things. It is always Constitution and individualism. That's what never Trump means.
And, you know, it's interesting. Conservative Iowa radio talk show host Steve Deese has been putting out a 7-piece serial over there at Conservative Review discussing exactly how it is that conservatism lost in this election cycle. And one of the things he points to is something that we've mentioned here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer before. It's that the conservatives are not trying to reach people on a more visceral level, on a more human level. They're going out there and instead of pushing for social conservative positions and all the things that we've held near and dear for generation after successive generation, they're trying to make it on these charts and numbers of well, it's the economy or it's this or it's that, instead of standing up for the social issues. And so you're now having right-wing people come out and say, well, no, you can't win on a socially conservative position, you can't win on the Constitution, and that's a mixture of equine and bovine excrement, because truth be told, what really needs to be done to win is that we have to fight for the hearts, souls, and minds of the American people, because the Fabian socialists have been about dismantling the country, have been about forcing this type of nonsense down our throat. And so while the claim that the United States of America is a center-right nation may still be accurate, it's just that the center has moved so far to the left that today's Republicans are yesterday's Democrats. We have to stop this hemorrhaging. And that's greater than the Supreme Court. That's greater than the 2016 election. That's greater than Hillary Clinton. That's greater than Donald Julius Caesar Trumpolini, because it speaks to a major problem. with ideology and viability and vitality of the movement going into the future. And right now, with the alternative right or alt-right trying to take over the conservative movement, we have got to act.
Well, let's take a look at this term, social issues.
Now,
Social issues, well, it's indicative of issues that pertain to a society. Folks, if we allow our society to become so divorced and shunned away, all of these other issues, all these facts and figures in these graphs don't mean anything. They mean nothing if we have no society to implement them in. So we have to look at the social issues like abortion, religion, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the Constitution. People would say, well, that's not, a social issue. It is the biggest social issue. It is the mother of all social issues. Why? Because it specifically is designed to extrapolate what it means to be a society, a free society. Social issues don't just come out of thin air. They come from societal norms. And those societal norms ought to be rooted in the principles of natural law, fundamental foundational building blocks, such as in the Constitution, period.
Yeah, and that's because the Constitution is the bedrock of this society.
Yes.
It is what defines us both as a nation and as a people. And that's clearly what Deese was getting at. But it is true. The conservative movement has bought into this erroneous notion of voting for the lesser of two weasels for so long now that we have steadily been losing the greater battle. Because it's like what they were able to do with the John Birch Society. It's what they've been able to do with Joseph McCarthy and the way that they've been able to rewrite the history. If you do not have an effective way of getting a message that connects to people on that visceral level, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be able to advance your agenda. You're not going to be able to hand down the fundamental and inalienable rights to the up-and-coming generations, and indeed those generations which have yet to be born, because they're not going to be taught that. It's going to be written out. It is going to eventually just be bred out when each younger generation is coming up, not knowing the true history of the United States, not knowing those things that are of the utmost value, not understanding who we are as a nation and as a people. And that is one of the great dangers that we here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, are trying to attack and push back by spreading the knowledge of our Constitution, by discussing how it continues to have an impact in the facets of our daily lives, because that is the only way we are going to be able to stem the tide of this malarkey that is threatening us and to push the United States of America back onto the path of prosperity. We simply just do not have a choice.
Well, we have to make some distinctions here when we talk about social issues as well. And a lot of people have the viewpoint that same-sex marriage is a social issue. No, it's a non-issue, because what has happened with the Fabians, and this is their agenda, they create an issue and then they wrap it in something and label it as a social issue, and then they push it on as their agenda. That's what's happened with gay marriage. That's what's happened with abortion. Now, abortion actually does have a social issue attachment to it, a legitimate one, because it deals with the right to life, which is found in the Constitution. There is no right with regards to marriage. There's zero rights regarding marriage. It is not an enumerated right within the Constitution. It's what's known as an extra constitutional right, i.e. a made-up right. And so they take it and they label it as a social issue. Well, marriage equality, this. Guess what? I hate to break everybody's bubble on the Fabians. Actually, I love to burst their bubbles. But guess what? Equality is not even a social issue in their ideology, the way they're spinning it. Because we already have equality. We already have equality.
Yes, but
We already
keep in mind that what they're doing is they're rewriting it, changing
Sure.
it away from
And-
equal opportunities to equal outcomes, which was never what our founding fathers intended, was never intended in the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of our shared United States Constitution. And that's
Exactly
part
my
of
point.
the dubious point that they're doing. The Fabian socialists are doing everything they can to unravel the societal fabric of these United States of America. They're doing everything in their power to pit American citizen against American citizen in this threadbare tactic and strategy of divide and conquer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, that just illustrates the point of them taking something, wrapping it up in something that sounds good, and oh, this sounds fun and nice and easy, and hey, maybe we can make some kind of potpourri out of it, so our houses will smell nice when the lady with the clipboard comes to ask you how many guns you have, and then they can take them all away. We're not playing that game. This is not a game that is to be played with people's lives, their well-being, their ability, and their sacred birthright of being the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. You cannot play with these things. And when we have individuals like Rush Limbaugh sit idly by and espouse the tenets of somebody and not holding somebody accountable that wants to play right into that and do all this, and hell, he contributed money to the Fabians. He is co-owner of Trump Towers in Chicago with one of the most notorious Fabians of all time, George Soros.
Well, speaking of Fabians, he's also, you know, that Huma Abedin Wiener and Tony Carlos Danger, I tweeted my wiener to people who didn't want it, he donated money to him. He donated money to him. Newsmax even has a piece on this, that Wiener and Trump had a basic, NBC says Trump donated to Wiener's political campaigns. And yet now he's coming out and saying it's a good thing that Huma Abedin is leaving Tony Wiener? I mean, seriously? This is a man who has been married 3 times, cheating on each of his former wives with the new wife? Give me an ever-loving break. You see, this is the epiphany and the embodiment of hypocrisy, and we have seen that time and again with the Donaldoff Julius Caesar Trumpolini train. At least under Mussolini, the trains arrived on time, right? But what the hell's in them? What the hell is in there that is going to be beneficial for the country? Because when you stop and look at Trumpolini, what he's doing is not in our best interest. What he's doing is for himself, and I don't even think he's trying to win. There's nothing there to suggest that he's trying to win.
Well, I don't think he's had any intention of winning at all this whole time. Again, I believe he's nothing more than a fluttering billboard. This is one of the greatest infomercials of all time that anybody could have ever created for him to do this. And by the way, folks, we're approaching 9 p.m. Eastern time, which means you're 2 hours past the deadline of donating money to Donald Trump now, because that ended at 7 o'clock tonight. So you can't donate for your chance to win dinner with him. Give me an ever-loving break, because...
Oh, did you actually hear that turned out to be a fraud? They're sending a cease and desist letter to the super PAC that put that out, saying that Trump never agreed to it. That came out today.
Oh, so let's see. Donate to my Trump University, and I'll teach you all how to make millions of dollars doing real estate by swindling people. But yet now, oh, well, you can't do that. It's the same thing.
It gets better than that, Jeremy. It gets better than that, Jeremy, because remember he said that with respect to that super PAC that put out the pictures of Malaria Trumpolini on GQ magazine in Utah, he said clearly Cruz was connected with that. Well, now Trump is saying that he wasn't connected with this, that it wasn't he who was doing this, and that's why his own lawyers are going after this PAC. Well, here's the thing, Trumpolini, if you weren't going to allow that for Ted Cruz, then we're not going to allow it for you. In other words, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, and we're going to hold you accountable for this. Clearly, you are the one that did this, and now you need to live up to it.
Yeah. And if he had nothing to do with it or didn't warrant it or whatever, why was Mike Pence's Facebook page posting out the same stuff? I'm just curious. I have nothing to do with it. Pay no attention to the smally hands behind the curtain. Really? Again, this points directly to him running this dog and pony show known as the world's most genius yet worst QVC info commercial of all time. I mean, it's just, and Randy, the most sickening part about this is, again, individuals that you and I had great amounts of respect for have jumped on board this, and they've attacked us. They've argued with us. They've called us names, called us un-American, unpatriotic.
Right.
Why, these are the same individuals that pulled this nonsensical crap when McCain was running. Oh, if you're not voting for McCain, then you're voting for Obama. Well, we knew, at least I found out after that election night when McCain gave his concession speech, which shook me to the core because I thought to myself, what the hell have I done? I've wasted my vote. And then it all became clear to me that Obama was going to win regardless. And the same with Romney. That's why I couldn't support Romney. I knew he couldn't beat Obama. I knew for a fact he couldn't, because there's no way in hell. He wouldn't go after Obama for what he needed to, i.e. Fast and Furious. And hell, why? Here's the thing. Why isn't Trump bring up Fast and Furious?
No,
that's still going on. There's still individuals that are dying at the hands of illegal drug cartels, getting weapons that are seized from law-abiding citizens here in the United States. They're being seized by our government.
And here's the thing. It's because he's not going out and attacking Democrat senators. He's not going after the Democrats nearly as hard as he ever went after the Republicans. And again, that raises that nagging question that just won't go away. That, was he just here to be a plant? Because it seems by the great weight of the evidence that he's not wanting to win, that he's not in this to win. It's just part of his Trumpaganda, his goal to force this upon us and to essentially, again, shape it how he sees fit without focusing on what really matters, and that's winning. But not just winning, that means standing with the Constitution. But he himself said that it's what, the 12-article document? No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. And it's 7 articles. And well, I've heard lame brain excuses that they were trying to reference the 10th Amendment there, that is Article 12. Well, no, it's not. Clearly, they don't know how to read the Constitution. He doesn't know how to read the Constitution. And that puts us in just this disgusting and untenable situation.
Well, his version of the Constitution was written by the 2 Corinthians, so I guess that'll just explain everything. And then edited and revised by what was her name? Lois Capps out in California, who said that the Constitution specifically says life, liberty, and health care is rights. Really? Okay, Lois Capps. Yeah, you biggest fraud. One of the biggest frauds. It's so disgusting. It really is.
Right. So Rebecca Shabbat at CBS News today at 8:39 a.m. put out this report. Dinner with Trump Super PAC gets cease and desist letter from Trump campaign. Donald Trump's presidential campaign sent a cease and desist letter to a super PAC that is unaffiliated with the campaign. But remember what Trump said again was that, well, that one that was unaffiliated with Cruz really wasn't, so it must be affiliated with him, using his logic, applying it fairly and equally so that the system's not rigged, as he would claim. And the letter concerns American Horizons PAC, run by a 25-year-old named Ian Haas, Hawes, Haas, according to the report, and it operates dinnerwithtrump.org. The report notes that Trump's official campaign has been offering its own dinner promotion, so that's why Pence is doing that. So, you see, again,
Well,
what's good for the goose ought to be good for the gander, should it not?
well, here's the thing. Logically speaking, and this is just me, thinking outside my little box that I live in here. In order for something like that to even transpire, wouldn't you have to have permission from the individual in order to, I don't know, put them together at a dinner table with a couple of people who may win the chance to have dinner with Donald J. Trump?
Jeremy,
Would you have to sign off on that?
Don't get caught up in rules.
Oh,
This is the post-truth campaign.
But rules are so much fun.
Yeah, but that's the name of the game. Rules aren't bigly enough. So here's the amazing thing, though. The report says Trump campaign also sent a letter to the Federal Elections Commission about the situation, in which it says the super PAC is defrauding its supporters. Wait. Is that not dripping with irony? This guy raised $1 million from 20,000 donors. Several donors have now requested refunds. Well, here's the problem. With Trump as the nominee, we ain't going to get refunds for his failed dinner policies and the bigger fraud that he has pulled on the American people.
Did people get their refunds from Trump University?
I think it's still in court, so no.
I think it's still in court. So, is this just another one of his... I don't know. I know what it is. I know what it is. He's setting up a new reality show. The Apprentice Supreme Court. That's what it is. The Apprentice Supreme Court, because he's wanting to set all these lawsuits. Again, this fits right in line with his brand of marketing. He's getting his name out there so that he can make millions and millions of dollars. He doesn't care what the results are, so long as the money starts flowing in. And if the coffer stops, flowing in for him, well, he'll just, figure out some other way to scam people out of their money. I distinctly remember him going on one of Jay Leno's shows back in the 90s. And Jay Leno asked him, he says, what happens if, you go bankrupt? He says, I filed for bankruptcy and I set up another business. Really? You filed for bankruptcy? Well, we know you did that 4 times in 11 years, which is federally illegal. Oops.
Yeah, that violates the bankruptcy laws. But, it goes to a deeper message here. This guy, this House character, was just following in Trump's footsteps. Defrauding people is what Trump's done for years upon years, and already I can hear the Branch Trumpidian tabernacles screaming, but tough excrement. This is who your man is. This is what Trump has always been about. He's never been about the little guy. He's never been about anything other than himself. And the fact that you didn't want to listen to reality, the fact that you didn't care to hear what everyone was trying to tell you, that this man was not a tenable candidate and would not be successful and would clearly be unable to defeat Hillary Rotten Clinton in that looming general election cycle slated for later this November, you suffer from that acute ostrich syndrome. You've shoved your head so far up the posterior that the water in your kidneys is basically just quenching your thirst. We're sorry. That's probably unhealthy. But so is following Don Trumpolini.
Yeah. It's just... And again, going back to Rush Limbaugh and his ilk, they're perpetuating this. They're perpetuating it. They're telling people, don't listen to the naysayers. Don't listen to this. I've done this and I've done... I don't care what you've done. I don't care what show you've been on, what network you've been on, how many books you've written or paid somebody else to write on your behalf. I don't care. Because what you have to say no longer holds any credible words of wisdom with me. You have tried to indoctrinate people at this point. You are removing all sense and sensibility of an individual being able to think for themselves. You want people to fall in line. Again, it goes to that old adage, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down. That's what they're doing. They're doing this on a smaller scale. They're not doing it across the board. They're doing it with a certain group of individuals. And see, that is Hitleresque. It's Hitleresque.
Of course it is. It's because what Trump is promoting here is a new type of fascism. And just look at the way that the alt-right falls into that category, the way that they promote that sort of rubbish and nonsense. Again, this is why we need to be standing up to them. It's why we need to be vigilant and proactive, because if we don't, these people are going to keep attacking those things that matter the most to us. And that's the thing. It goes back to like what Edmund Kozak, the cucksucker, was sitting there saying at LifeZets, that the Constitution's just a piece of paper. Well, yeah, if you're a moron, clearly Edmund Kozak, the cucksucker, is a moron. But for those of us who care about the country, for those of us who want to see the United States of America return to the path of prosperity, the Constitution is the key. And it's been with us since the inception of the nation some 235 plus years ago. And that's the major disconnect. We have got to get the Constitution being a quintessential part of the society which it defines and regulates. Otherwise, they're going to push us over this precarious cliff. They're going to essentially dismantle all that we hold near and dear in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours, and we can ill afford it because we have nothing there to replace it, nothing logistically there to assume the position of a fair government and to prevent the power vacuum that most certainly will follow in the wake of this.
Furthermore, we wouldn't have anything in place for, I don't know, 100 years?
At least.
It would take at least 100 years to get back to what we have now that we're trying to preserve and defend. See, and you mentioned the Constitution being the key. And it just reminds me of somebody who loses their keys and they can't find them. And you see all these technological gadgetry, the cyber wizardry, where you can have an app for your phone to find your damn car keys. Well, you know what? It seems
or to
like
unlock your car.
Or to unlock your car. Maybe we need an app for people to be able to, I don't know, find the Constitution and actually get back to reading it.
Well, there was a funny meme that came out back in 2013 with Velociraptor. And this was back when the whole Edward Snowden thing was going on. It showed Velociraptor. You know the picture, the green background with the raptor there with the claw as though he's thinking. And it said, gee, if I put the Constitution in my email, does that mean the government will finally start reading it?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, that was brilliant. But
yes.
And it goes to the point of what the problem is here. We have so many who are wielding the reins of political power currently as we sit here and speak into our microphones that have no interest in the Constitution, have basically no idea what's in them, or are just proactively out to destroy it. And then you have the alt-right, the alternative right, who have come out and grimaced over what the Constitution says because they want to change the definition of what it means to be a sovereign. They want it to be race-based, or they want it to be tribal-based. No, that just violates everything that we hold near and dear. That's diametrically opposed to the clear and concise language contained within the four corners of the United States Constitution, and that further explains why they are working so meticulously to unravel it, to destroy it, to eradicate it.
Yeah, and those same individuals in the alt-right are sitting here saying, well, we're not the alternative right. It's the conservatives or the cuckservatives now that are the alt-right. They're trying to shift the blame of the label. Typical Fabian tactics. Because that's essentially what they are now, Randy, is nothing more than Fabians or Fabian lights. Their whole idea of this is, well, they would just absolutely love it if Well, they can have their way, and they can create some form of a caste system here in the United States to where, they can just get rid of everybody else that opposes their ideology and throw all their weight behind their quotator in chief to do this, this, and this. And yeah, no, it's not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
But it basically sets it up to where they can march their own brand of socialism in. And that's what populism is. Remember that the Nazis were a populist movement. The fascists in Italy were a populist movement. Hell, even Franco over there in Spain, the longest lived, the longest toothed, if you will, fascist regime started off as a populist movement. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to see that that's the way it goes. They were reactionaries, and in fact, one of the major factions of the so-called alternative right is known as the neo-reactionaries. They call themselves the Black or Dark Enlightenment movement, and what they mean by that is they are going against the Enlightenment era philosophy. Well, guess what our Constitution is based upon? Enlightenment era philosophy focused on the natural law. What was about the Enlightenment with respect to that, it's this whole notion that sovereignty rests squarely in the hands of we the people, that we the people are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. So in other words, the alt-right are nothing but a bunch of collectivists trying to get rid of individual self-accountability, self-responsibility, and those two factors working in tandem to give us self-determination. So in other words, they really do want to restore us to almost a feudalist system. And that takes us back to what Alexis de Tocqueville said in the opening decades of the United States, which is that anyone who supports any flavor, form, or facet of socialism is just a new age feudalist. Why? Because they want to control the facets of our daily lives. They want to control everything from cradle until grave. And that's where we see them. That is what they are trying to do to us, and to plunge us back to that unacceptable collectivist mentality.
It's like you plucked the thoughts right out of my frontal lobe. It's just, I was just sitting there thinking, Alexis de Tocqueville, New Age feudalists, and ta-da, there it is. It can't be any more succinct than that. It's very precise. Again, folks, history is a beautiful thing. It is a wonderful teacher. It is one of the greatest teachers known to man. Mm-hmm. Known to man. As what you said before, Randy, history. Let's break it down. His story.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. And if people aren't willing to listen to history and pay attention to it,
then they're doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past.
Yes. Yes. I'm not the type of individual that goes out looking to make mistakes. I'd rather mistakes happen on my own initiative, through my own doing, not through
omission.
Not through omission, through a collectivist agenda, by jumping on board something that's speeding towards the biggest brick wall you've ever freaking seen,
mm-hmm.
and just exploding on impact. Forget the derailment. Guess what? It's just going to be a fireball. It's just a complete explosion. No derailment's going to happen. There will be nothing.
It's just going to consume everybody that's there, just like it will consume the conservative movement. That's the major problem we're facing. And the Lion Branch Trumpidians and their tabernacle don't want to face the facts. They don't want to face reality because that would be too bigly and too hard for them. But we see that their whole apparatus is beginning to unravel. Now, Stephen K. Bannon, you know, the guy who was there at Breitbart Media, who is now the CEO of Trump's campaign. I've never even heard of a CEO of a political campaign before. I must admit that's a new one for me. And, I am fairly politically active and astute. So,
Quaff executive officer?
Yeah, I guess so. But when he was married to his ex-wife, with his daughter. He was very concerned that the private schools that he was sending his twin daughters to had a lot of Jews in them. He wanted to send them elsewhere where there weren't any Jews. Why does that sound like Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany?
Oh, but wait, Randy, I have some info for you on Stephen K. Bannon.
Oh, goody.
This comes from a conversation I had with our first Air Marshal, Nelson Ward. Mm-hmm. He has his fingerprints all over some little pack in Arizona that's fighting on behalf of John McCain against Paul Gosar, running smear ads and attack ads against Paul Gosar in Arizona.
Well, John McCain was running that against a House guy. What about Kelly Ward?
Yeah, well, I think he's... no. These ads are with
specifically targeting Paul Gosar. Okay.
Yeah. Well, he's actually helped out with John McCain as well, but I mean he's running attack ads against Paul Gosar, and I'm thinking, wow, Bannon, why does that name sound familiar? I was like, oh yeah, now duh, it rung a bell with me.
So in other words, the cucksuckers are trying to once again throw their weight behind the detente wing of the gutless opposition party to force us into this untenable and unacceptable situation, except they want to put an anti-Jewish tirade to it, an anti-Mormon tirade to it, because one of the things we exposed about Bannon on a previous episode was that he had essentially put forth this attack against the Mormon church, saying that the Mormon church had supported open borders, and then he published that piece by Tom Tancredo, which, shame on you, Tancredo, honestly, shame on you for attacking the people's religion like that. I know you tried to weasel out of it in that Breitbart piece that you pinned by saying that it wasn't a First Amendment freedom of religion issue. Give me an ever-loving break. We can see right through it. You are as transparent with respect to your inclinations there as can be possible, and you have tainted yourself by aligning yourself with such rubbish that truly has no place in an open, honest, but above all free society like that of the United States of America. And to think, I supported you in 2008. Well, live and learn, as they say. Live and learn.
Yeah. So we have Bannon, who is an anti-Semite, anti-Mormon. I'm guessing he's probably anti-religion altogether, except for the Trump town. The Jim Jones, the Trump Town Tabernacles, where they're all going to, get a bunch of blonde wigs and brand new Nikes and drink cool, Quaffade out of the bathtub. Maybe that's his preferred religion, and that's okay. If that's his preferred religion, hey, that's his First Amendment right. That's fine. But how dare you disparage other people's religions and the free exercise thereof by them? How dare you? Who the hell do you think you are?
Oh, he thinks he's the second coming of the Quaff, I'm sure. But
I don't care. He can go to hell.
Yeah, of course he can. Of course he can. But here's something that's kind of interesting. Mark Levin has come out and basically said to Trump surrogates, you can't blame Crystal Goldberg or Glenn Beck for a Trump loss. And I've actually got a little soundbite of that, and I'm going to pull that up and then we'll discuss it. So here we go.
I respect you in my audience. I respect your intelligence. You're concerned about the future of this country. You want nothing to do with the Hillary Clinton win. I'm with you. But this Republican primary has nominated somebody who's going to have a hell of a difficult time winning. And let me make something clear. As big as my audience is, millions and millions of people on digital platforms, on satellite, on terrestrial radio, AM and FM, it's not big enough. It's simply not big enough. All the conservative media combined is not big enough to reach as many people as the candidate himself can reach. It is the candidate who leaves the impression. It is the candidate who is make or break. It is the candidate who, every time he speaks or tweets or what have you, is covered by a media that reaches tens of millions of people, 100 million people, 120 million people.
And he keeps counting off, and I don't care about the numbers, but the point that he was making there is valid. It is the candidate. It's not us. The candidate has to win our vote. The candidate has to go out and work to deserve that vote. But Trump hasn't done that. In fact, Trump has basically gone out and doubled down on these efforts where he said that basically he didn't want us, that he didn't need us, that it is the Republican Party and not the Conservative Party. Well, he can go straight to hell.
Which I think proves another point, Randy, that he has no intention of winning.
No, of course not.
That proves another point that he has no intention of winning, because nobody in their right mind would want to disenfranchise people that may possibly vote for him. Okay?
Yeah.
You don't tell people, hey, I don't need your vote. I've got plenty of other people to vote. I don't need your vote. Does he even understand how many people did not vote for him in the primaries? Nor voted for Hillary Clinton in the primaries? There was something of, I think, 130 million people. 130 million people did not vote for him or Hillary in the primaries. In the primaries alone.
And then he goes out and does this stupid thing of where he's going to reach out to the nerd face, boing me Sanders voters. Seriously, what is the flying saucer going to bring to us? Why would bringing socialists who are against all that we stand for help the party? It doesn't, other than it once again drives that wedge further into the base of the gutless opposition party, or GOP, thereby seeing that Hillary Clinton has a shoe-in for the general election. And again, that's why it brings up this whole question of whether or not he was a plant from the very beginning. And of course, I think the great weight of the evidence shows that it's beyond a reasonable doubt that he was not in here to win it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten rid of the infrastructure that he had in those various primary and caucus states he won. He wouldn't have gone out and said that it's the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party, and that there are national-based conservative parties on the ballot in every state. No, really isn't. And then he wouldn't have gone out and reached out to Bernie Sanders supporters. And remember, there was that time that he actually mistook Bernie Sanders' platform for his own when he was on The View or one of those god-awful talk shows. Yeah. It just goes to show that he's not with it, really.
Yeah, it's we have to really look at this. Like you said, I think the evidence is clear. It's paramount that he has no intentions of winning whatsoever. And again, he's wrapping all of these other individuals up with him. We don't hear anything about Lewandowski anymore, or Lewandowski, whatever his name was.
We just did today. Apparently, Trump gets a call from him every day, or he calls Trump every day, and that they're working together again. This despite the fact that he's being a paid guy at CNN. He's a paid strategist, political consultant at CNN, which ought to be a conflict of interest. In fact, I believe it was Stephen Colbert went out and hit Anderson Cooper, who appeared on a show, saying, how can you trust this guy? How can you claim that anything he says has any validity whatsoever when he's basically gone out and done all of this excrement that he did? Remember, in 1999, he was arrested for having a gun in the bottom of his clothing bag that he was trying to get into one of the Senate office buildings.
Yeah. But, Randy, if you or I would have done something like that, we would have been buried under a prison cell. So, again, this brings me to a rant that is long overdue. And I started this a couple of shows ago, and here it is. Why the hell do we have to trust what everybody else says? All these people that think that they're high and mighty, they're upper social class, this and that and the other thing, because of their name or because of who they rub elbows with or whose hair they shampoo. Why is it that they get their voices heard? Why is it that everybody puts every kind of ounce of integrity in what they say, but nobody wants to put that kind of integrity or that kind of credibility with the American people's voice? Nobody is listening to the American people.
I'll tell you. This goes back to the rise of a cult of personality that started in silent movie era Hollywood. Literally, people were starting to change fads based on what Gloria Swanton was wearing in the latest Cecil B. DeMille film, or what people were doing. It was a glamorous thing. It was a fake in a sense, but that is what started it, and it just built upon that as the generations went by, and so that became a more and more powerful thing, to where now celebrity endorsements are exceedingly popular because people all of a sudden somehow give them this attainment of enlightenment by being good looking and up on a movie screen. That's literally what it boils down to, and therefore people are going for that fakeness. But it's not just bread and circuses, Jeremy. It goes deeper. It goes deeper. It goes to they're projecting their own images onto that, saying that's what I want. The way I can get that is to emulate that or to push that. So it's like I've said with Donald Julius Caesar Trumpolini, one of the great problems with him is that people aren't projecting their own self-image to him. Therefore, he can stand for anything and nothing at the same time. It's like why he went out and said that he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose a single voter. It's because these voters are so desperate to have their own self-identity and have projected it onto him that they see fulfillment through it. And they're going to be dissatisfied and left unhappy, shocked, and reeling each and every time.
Well, here it is. This is what it is. It's propaganda at its purest form. It reminds me of a Maybelline commercial. You know, the slogan for Maybelline, maybe she's born with it, maybe it's Maybelline. No, maybe they're born with it, but maybe it's Trumpoline. Yeah. That's what it is. He is now a facial beauty product. He is makeup. And what do people use makeup for? To conceal their own true identity.
And imperfections.
Blemishes, imperfections. Maybe these cocksuckers are born with it, but maybe it's Trumpoline. Who knows?
Right.
That's what it is. I mean, you bring up that era with CCB DeMille, and it's just it dawned on me that that's what it is. These individuals are projecting their own fantasies, their own thoughts as to what their lives would be like, as they're trying to live vicariously through somebody that actually has the social status and means of doing it. In other words, it's envy. It's pure, unadulterated envy. Instead of people wanting to, think for themselves, live for themselves, who gives a damn what anybody else thinks of them, so long as they're right, they're free, and they have their rights, and they're exercising them without doing harm to others. It's not rocket science. We don't need Ben, I'm a victim Carson to do rocket surgery for us. Right. Brain surgery, whatever.
What it boils down to is we have to get back to remembering that it is we, the people, that are the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty. We are the only ones that are endowed with the power, the authority, and the wherewithal to save this country. And so we have to stop looking at these quafftastic messianic figures that have no place being anywhere near the reins of political power in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic of ours. Because remember, our founding fathers had fought against a centralized authority all throughout the American War of Independence, against the centralized authority of the Crown and Parliament. And therefore, they inherently distrusted federal government or central government. That's why in the Articles of Confederation, they really had made a very weak central government that couldn't levy taxes. It couldn't do much of anything. That wound up being too weak. That's why we had the Constitutional Convention, to make a more perfect union. And so Edmund Cucksucker over there might be trying to say that, well, you guys just told the Constitution to be perfect. No, we don't. But name me one thing over there, you little Trump-Luddite, that is better than the Constitution. Name me something more perfect than the Constitution and that has been in place uninterrupted for as long as the Constitution. Trick question there, little cucksucker. There ain't one.
Yeah. But hey, in his eyes, it's just a piece of paper. Well, you know what else is just a piece of paper? In my eyes, using his logic, that sheepskin that he, lauds about with his history degree, that's just a piece of paper. That doesn't mean anything. You know what? I have 2 of them hanging on my wall in my office. And guess what? Someone could light a match and torch them. I don't care. Because really, in a sense, those are just a piece of paper. I already know what they signify. And that can't be taken away from me. Because it is forever entrenched in my heart and in my mind. Mm-hmm. Much like the Constitution. Somebody could take a copy of the Constitution, a replica of it, and burn it. Okay. Kind of idiotic and kind of stupid, but doesn't mean that it's going to go away. It doesn't mean that it's not written on my heart and on my mind, because it is.
Just as it is with any American citizen. And no, he doesn't understand it. And it goes to the greater issue of what Steve Deese was pointing to in that 7-piece serial that he's been putting out there at Conservative Review, that we have to fight for the conscience of our society and our culture, that there is a culture here and that the alt-right is trying to redefine culture to base it on tribalism. Well, no. Culture in the United States of America is clearly delineated in the confines of our shared United States Constitution. It's the only way that it can be, and we have to work towards that. Otherwise, we lose track of everything that is of the utmost importance, and that leaves us exposed, dangerously exposed. And we have to stand up for all that we hold near and dear. Otherwise, it doesn't mean a blessed thing.
Yeah, if you don't stand for this, then you'll fall for anything.
Right.
That's just the way it is. 6-2 or fight. Mm-hmm. 6-2 or fight is what it boils down to. Now, Randy, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this. I would love to have Steve Deese on our show. I think it would be great. I would love to have him. I'd love to have Mark Levin on our show. Mm-hmm. Will it happen? I don't know. It could, possibly. But I think it would be, never say never. I think it would be inspiring to have either one or both of those individuals at separate times, or even together. Together would be just, but
amazing.
I know that I would learn something from both of those individuals. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you would learn something from both of those individuals. And you know what? I would like to think that they would each learn something from each of us as well.
Of course they would.
And we don't agree with Mark Levin 100% of the time. I'm sure we don't agree with Steve Deese 100%. That's the beauty of this. That is what's known as civil discourse. And again, I point back to those hot summer days from 1787 to 1789, when there was civil discourse framing our country. You had negotiations, but they were on the scale of nobody would back down and concede completely their entire position. That's where true compromise comes in. See, everybody wants to talk about, oh, well, we have to reach across party lines and compromise. No, not when it comes to compromising with our rights. You cannot compromise with them. They're not
like
negotiable.
You can't compromise. It's just like you can't compromise your principles. You have to stand on your principles. And that's what we've forgotten, both as a nation and as a people. And that's, of course, one of the things that we're trying to accomplish here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. It's that we're trying to get us back onto the path to prosperity. And as we have stated so many times, the Constitution is the key. That is what is going to deliver us back to the Constitution, because we have to rely on that as our strength, as our guiding light, because when we do so, that is when we begin to overcome all of the hurdles and obstacles and adversities that have been placed in our path. And so the only way that we can overcome that is to come together, standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity and unity, and standing up for these things. And that's what we will continue to do. It's why we are the new resistance. Now, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and begin the descent. I'm going to also send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. She's not a cucksucker. She's just there to pour you alcohol. As always, folks, I'm Randy Wright, and I've been your captain. I'm joined by my first officer. We want to thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We also invite you to leave any questions, comments, or concerns you have either here on our Facebook page or our YouTube page, or you can follow us on Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX. There you will find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, the personal Twitter account of my first officer, Jeremy Grapington, the Blogspot account, which we are putting up all of our new episodes in audio-only format, folks, so you can go and download that and listen on your own leisure time. And then there's the Cafe Press account. Tell them a little bit about that, Jeremy, before we fully wrap up.
Well, Cafe Press account, let's see, we have a bunch of novelties, gift ideas, apparel, so on and so forth. And I guarantee you, folks, I promise you this, no matter how much you spend on the Cafe Press account, we are not offering dinner with Randy and I. Dinner for two. No, it's just not going to happen.
Now you could buy it for us.
Sure, that'd be great. But we'll never expect you to buy for our, great flight attendant and whatnot. If she ever asks you, well, push her out of a plane.
Right, because that's what we would do. As always, folks, thank you for choosing to fly the Wright Flyer. We will see you next time. Do take care.